Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Liz, and this is my colleague,
Shelley.
And Shelley and I are here, and we're going to begin a series on self-reflection and self-love. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about who we are and how we got here. And then as the series continues, when we finish up our piece today, I'll give you a little bit more information on some of the ideas that we have in terms of what we would like to do next. And we'd certainly be open to your feedback as well. So we'll get to that at the end of our session today. And so we're just going to spend some time explaining to you a little bit about ourselves, how we came to coaching, and what we hope to achieve. So, Shelley, tell me a little bit about yourself and about your background and how you got here.
Well, I think that I've been on this journey since I was a child. I think I've been heading this way forever. I'm a very empathetic person, and I think the beginning of that empathy came from my mom, who once told me, "You must never judge another person until you walk a mile in their shoes." Being about 6 years old, I really tried hard to imagine being in someone else's shoes. And I think that was the beginning of learning and understanding of other people. I became a very attentive and understanding teen in my 20s. I worked with scientists from all over the world and discovered it was so much more about who they were. And I worked with people that had experienced Auschwitz, and they were amazing people who had experienced tremendous things. And I also took up working in respite care, and it was never about the job as much as about the people. However, on the way, while I was doing this, I had some problems of my own that needed to be resolved. And I didn't realize it until I arrived at the age of 29 through a series of lacking self-confidence, self-esteem. I had some very negative self-beliefs, and there I was, married to the wrong man. My life was falling apart, and I was in total chaos. I had to get some help, and that began my journey. I went to a wonderful woman who would have made an amazing life coach today, and she was so amazing as a counselor, and she guided me to understand that it's what you believe about yourself that guides the decisions you make, the things you do, the choices you make in your life. And I really had so much to learn, and I've been on that journey ever since. And I went into education. I worked with families in special needs, and along the way, again, I always found out, no matter who they were or what their level of ability was, it wasn't the ability that counted. It was understanding what they believed about themselves and how to help them change that belief into understanding that they could be so much more. So I was in education, I was in gymnastics, I was coaching, and throughout all this time, people were saying, you should be life coaching, you should take up counseling, you have a real ability to help people. And along the way, I'd have to say, it's what I love to do more than anything else. So here I am. I'm finally here as a transformational mindset coach for women, and I'm loving it. And also, the exciting part of all that is, as you help others, you achieve awareness and then clarity for yourself. It's a constant state of learning and experience that allows you to find more in yourself, and also that excitement of being able to see something beautiful in every single person you meet and work with. So that's kind of where I'm from. Now, Liz, it's your turn. Tell me about you.
Wow. So, it's funny. We have some things that we did very differently in life and some things that are very, very similar. For me, I came to this actually, I started in the world. My first employment was as an equestrian coach. So I was involved in that coaching field, just like Shelley. And I spent a number of years realizing that it wasn't the technical transference that really made the difference in a good coach. It was the caring. It was that caring for your students and helping your students develop more than anything. And over time, I became a mentor for a number of young women who are in this sport, and I loved it, and I loved working with them. Post-education, however, I found myself as a public service manager and eventually as a public policy executive. And so I then came back to this piece again as a manager of people. And I began to realize, and the more training I did in leadership, the more I realized that everything that I had already done in my early years were things that my people needed again. And so I became a people's manager and a people's director. And people stayed with me. There were a number of my colleagues that had revolving doors, and my teams never did that. For all those years, I became known as that people manager. But what it came down to was that I cared about my people. And yes, I cared about deadlines, but more importantly, I cared about them. And I went to senior management on a very regular basis to say, my people are dying, like not literally, but figuratively, they're sick. This is too much. We need to do something to change this for them. And that was sort of as I became known. So I ended up then finding my way into out of management and into faculty in executive leadership. And I worked for the Center for Creative Leadership in the United States as a leadership change facilitator, as well as becoming a leadership specialist. And in that, I was always asked, well, could you coach? And I didn't have any certification at the time, but I was told it's just a conversation, go ahead. And so over time, I started to see people come to these programs and then want to talk again after. And I would see them completely change their lives from coming to see us at the beginning of their journey, and then a year later looking at what they had achieved. And for me, that was this amazing light bulb that went on that, wow, look at the impact this can have. And so I did my ICF coaching through the corporation and became the executive coach. But in all of that, there was something missing. And what was missing was being able to focus not just on results and on the interpersonal relationships around results, but to really truly focus on those people and what they needed. And so now sitting with life coach certification and as a life transition and resilience coach, I really do look forward to having more of those conversations, as those really were the highlight of my career to date. And I love working with clients. So that's a little bit about me. So Shelley, tell me, what is one trait that you've learned in life that has helped you to love yourself?
I think that I still go back to that wonderful ability to have empathy for others. And through that, it allows me to connect with others and care about others. And that is something I do love that about myself. And in doing so, it helps me to guide others to a better way of thinking about themselves and a better way of being.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
What about you, Liz? How did you? What trait in self-love have you learned?
I have always had a very strong intuition about other people. That capacity to feel other people's emotions, for me, is something that I actually feel those emotions physically and deeply. And there have been many things I've done in life that haven't allowed me to actually use that trait and that ability. But it is something that I do love about myself, and it's something that that is just so natural that I'm looking really forward to being able to allow that part of myself to be available to others.
Okay.
So, Shelley, how have you picked yourself up when you fell down in life?
Well, there have been a few times in my life when I have sunk so low, I didn't want to get out of bed. I couldn't get out of bed. I was so devastated and in such terrible despair, I really didn't think I could. But somehow there was, at every level of that terrible despondency, this awareness, this deep inner awareness that I had family that loved me. I had friends that loved me. And when people love you, you also realize they need you because they love you. You are an intricate part of their world. And so somehow that made me want to go on, to get up, pull myself together, and keep going. And that feeling became so much more once I had a child to worry about and think about, and that love that I also felt for her drove me on to get back up and get going.
Mm-hmm.
So, what about you?
Well, we certainly have that love for our child in common. I know that she's been my driving force for many years. And in fact, in my past, I was very ill and actually came through that through an organ transplant. And to live through organ failure is very challenging. But the gift on the other side is that gift of life, which is very, very special. And I can honestly say that that the card, that one card in that resilience deck for me has always been my daughter. And when I was in those moments, the one thing that drove me was that she had and needed and deserved to have a mother, and that it wasn't fair that for me not to make it. So I had to fight. And that ability to fight and keep fighting and to be resilient and to be able to stay moving and stay in motion no matter how hard it gets is something that is a real challenge for all of us. And I'll just close by saying that I used to work with an equestrian coach, and we used to go to competitions, which would start very early in the morning. And she always used to say to me, just remember, when the alarm goes off, sit up. And frankly, that to me is a really good way of expressing that need to stay in motion at all costs. Yeah, so that's my thought on that.
That's such a very inspiring story. You did bring tears to my eyes. So, yeah.
So, Shelley, if you were to write a letter to your 25-year-old self, looking back on life, what would you say to her?
I look back and see that young woman sitting alone, struggling in her life, not believing in herself, not believing that I was lovable. Everything from my self-image to self-esteem, self-confidence, and what I believed, I knew nothing. So to write to myself, I would say, "Dear Shelley, you are not unlovable. You just believe you are unlovable.
Mm-hmm.
What you need to do is find a way to reconnect to yourself. Remember the things that you love to do and make small steps to connect to people who love the things that you love, and find a community. Build your tribe. Build that group of people who can share in your life. And don't waste your life believing this untrue story, because there is life ahead. Don't waste this beautiful life. Be you.
Yeah.
And enjoy every minute that you have. We only get this way once.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
my daughter says, my daughter, we're going somewhere and she'll say YOLO, right? Which means you only live once.
Oh, I love that. That's wonderful.
We driving along, she'll go YOLO. That's great.
I'm going to remember that one. So now, if you had to write a letter to your 25-year-old self, what would it be?
25-year-old me had it together. 25-year-old me had a lot of things figured out that that a lot of folks my age might not have figured out. And I think it came from those years coaching, going to competitions with 23 ponies and 23 kids and 23 nervous mothers, and I had this non-stop strength, a deep conviction for what I believed in, a very strong drive and a real passion for the things I loved and the life that I was leading and living. And there were complexities in that life that might not necessarily have been there for others who are my age. So what I would say is that actually I need to learn from her today more than she needs to learn from me. There is also a set, though, of wisdom that comes with time and with life experience. And so I would definitely give that back to her, in the sense that, there was a lot of looking forward and, well, when I get there, well, it's the journey, right? It's not the goal. And there was a whole lot of when I get there in that life at that time. So that would be the one thing I would pass to that 25-year-old me is, you know what, it's the journey. So enjoy it every day. And I'm with you, Shelley, that every day is beautiful and it's a gift. And so, we can't really afford to waste it because, YOLO.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly right. Beautiful.
Yeah. So, Shelley, you and I were talking about COVID-19 and, some of the challenges that we've all lived in the last year. So what can you offer people who are struggling with COVID and the complications in their life that, have come from this challenging year and a bit?
Well, I think this is a really critical time, and it's important to recognize that in the beginning, everybody was gung-ho to do it right. Everybody did it right. We all locked down, we isolated, we put on the masks, we really put our best foot forward. We learned to work at home. We taught our children to work at home. We learned to have our spouses at home with us, and we Zoomed. We learned how to Zoom. Nobody knew how to Zoom hardly at all then. Everybody can Zoom now. We can all Zoom and Google Meet and hang out in so many different ways of connecting. But after 13 months, people are really starting to struggle. And so, over the past year, we've seen an increase in people struggling with anxiety, with stress, with loneliness, with depression. And it becomes harder. Everything is harder. It's more cumbersome to get your groceries, even to, if you've got a relative who's in a seniors facility, that's really terrifying because you know how vulnerable they are. So we start to kind of become, I would say, less able to function because of all the complications. Because 13 months later, some of us don't have jobs. Some of us are in financial crisis. Some of us have lost people that we love. So what can we offer? I think this is a time of extreme self-care. And, you know, I was a person who used to poo-poo that stuff. Oh, yeah, whatever. All that airy-fairy self-care stuff. Guess what? It is absolutely critical to be able to take care of ourselves, to be kind to ourselves, and to gather strategies for coping, provide people with new ways to navigate this new experience, because the world appears to have changed in a way that might last forever. Some of it might not ever quite go back to the way it was. So we need to help people rediscover their passions and rediscover the kinds of things that they may have lost track of in this crazy past year. So anyway, so self-development, awakening of who you really are, ways to move forward, even things like creating a workspace that's separate from yourself, and learning how to separate your identity of work from self when you're in the home all the time. Stopping the overthinking that goes on when we're in isolation, and the perfectionism and all of the things that come with it, to find serenity and calm in a time when the world is not very calm at all. So, what do you have to say about that, Liz?
Certainly has been a challenging time, and I totally agree that you know, at the beginning we thought, oh wow, we have time for things we haven't had time for in a long time. I think though that because we're not 12 anymore, we don't, you know, we actually were able to see a time when we weren't on our phones 24/7, and when, you know, we would sit around by candlelight when the power was out and, you know, play cards or play chess or whatever the family liked to play. And I think that brought back a whole new set of learning for the young people in our world right now, who, you know, who really began to see that there was time to do other things besides sit on the phone and do Snapchat and all of these kinds of things. I think in terms of, you know, helping people, we've seen exacerbation of all of social issues in our communities, right? Families that had food insecurity, it's worse. People that were having issues with employment, it's worse. But then there's another side to this, which is those people who are more or less relatively untouched. And I think there's really this two groups of people. I know, for example, on my street, 50 or 60% of the people on the street work for the Public Service of Canada. So, you know, they're all working at home. So their job has just morphed and changed, but they're still working. So, you know, that inequality is really a challenge, I think, for everyone. And I think one of the best things that we can do just as people and as life coaches is to listen and to give space to, you know, to those individuals to work through some of these, you know, big life challenges. I so feel for families with young children where you had two people working and two young children at home, and, you know, you had to truly do two things at once, right? You had to look after the small child and do your conference calls or whatever, right? And, you know, that took so much strength, particularly on the part of the mothers, you know, in those contexts, because yay, mommy's home, but really mommy's not available because she has to do these things. So I think that, you know, offering people that space is useful. And I think the final thing is, in terms of, you know, some of the stress and anxiety in homes and in families, you know, that's been really increased. And I think that that's something that we all need to be aware of. And you never know what cross people have to bear, until you get to know them. So, that ability to minimize judgment around us is critical to me in terms of us getting past this, this COVID-19 issue and getting our shots and, moving on with life, whatever that life becomes. And I agree with you, Shelley, that, it's going to be different. There's no question it's not going to be what it once was.
That's right.
I mean, look at what we're doing on Zoom, right? And, if you think about it, this would not have happened 18 months ago. So how awesome is that we're able to meet and work with each other thousands of miles apart. I mean, that's an amazing result of this. So it's very exciting.
Yes, there are some really amazing positives that have come out of it. And, I'm so grateful. I am so grateful.
Yeah, me too. So folks, thank you for being with us today. And we want to let you know that there's lots of great ideas coming in the coming weeks. And some thoughts we've had in terms of what the next series piece will be. Things like self-love, we just touched on that today. Resilience and being resilient in this world of COVID-19, loneliness and the impact of isolation that Shelley mentioned. Anxiety, social anxiety, both before, during, and after COVID, and the need for strong self-belief and strong mindset strategies. So those are some of our ideas, but please do feel free to send us your ideas. We'd love to hear more about things you'd like to hear about in our time together. Without further ado, we'll tell you how you can find us, and then we'll look forward to seeing you at our next chapter in this series. So you can find me at elizabethhochster@gmail.com, and that's Elizabeth with a Z, and then it's HOCHSTER@gmail.com, and on my Facebook page at Elizabeth Hochster, Coach for Life Transitions and Resilience. Shelley, where can they find you?
Okay, I can be reached at McInroy Shelley @gmail.com. That's all small letters, McInroyShelley @gmail.com. And for short, you can also reach me at Shelley for perfect positivity @gmail.com, and that's the number 4. So Shelley for positivity @gmail.com. And we thank you so much, everyone, for being with us. And thank you, Liz, for guiding me through this very first exciting experience of being on a YouTube and podcast designed experience for me.
Okay. You know what? We're going to have a lot of fun. So folks, feel free to tune in as we go live, and as we go live with all of the pieces of this series. Okay. So take care all. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.